Raise your hands. Raise your hands, those who have ever thought about what could have happened if all usual power sources, such as oil, coal, or something else, suddenly disappeared. Well, it sounds like a catastrophe film. Imagine a giant wasteland with ruins, no cars, no people are there. Somewhere over the world there are still wars for the last drops of oil, for the last pieces of coal. However, contrary to the expectations of many, most likely the oil age will end. Just like there was a stone age, which lasted till all stones are over. Actually not. People use traditional fuels more and more every year, as the amount of transport and factories is growing. Oil as a fuel for personal cars may run out relatively soon, as gasoline rises in price and quality of alternatives improves. After all, this is not only about biofuels. Skype is also an alternative to oil, which is being burned by a person to come to a personal meeting by his or her car. Other vehicles, as airplanes, ships and military transport, can last longer, even at a very high price, because oil is a very good storage of energy. But even when oil disappears as fuel, it will still remain an important economical element as a raw material for the chemical industry. And when and if even for this it will remain too few and in too inaccessible places, it will remain in the ground, underwater, so humanity will switch to other sources of energy and polymers. One of the best alternatives to fossils is solar panels. The efficiency of them was like 14% before recent times. Thanks to researches and modifications, it grew to 22%. It's still too low, but as you can see, totally possible to increase the efficiency of them. However, the main problem is not the low efficiency, but the way to contain the energy. First thing that comes to mind is battery. Battery is the easiest way to contain some amount of energy, sometimes very huge amount of this. Although batteries have some huge cons. First of all, their fragility. Usually batteries are effective and usable for like 3 or 5 years. Remember your new phone? For the first year it works awesome, remains charged for a long time, but the longer you use it, the worse it's working. Well, this is unacceptable for large-scale production and especially large-scale energetics. The second con is that batteries incredibly pollute the environment. Just imagine that a little battery, which feeds, for example, a flashlight, pollutes 400 liters of water and 20 square meters of soil. Even though this is a serious problem, there is a possible solution of it. What if we store energy in the form of some kind of chemical raw material and convert it into electricity when needed? It was decided that energy could be stored in the form of chemical bonds to convert the sunlight energy in hydrogen. Maybe somebody has heard about hydrogen fuel. It was decided that energy could be stored in the form of chemical bonds to convert the sunlight energy in hydrogen. Maybe somebody has heard about hydrogen fuel. What's so good about it? First of all, hydrogen fuel can be used as a fuel for cars, planes and other transport. It can be used for space heating and to get electricity. Thus, hydrogen allows us to replace all the minerals that are used nowadays. Another alternative to oil is biofuel. Biofuel is a form of fuel made of animal or plant materials or organic industrial waste. There are liquid biofuel, which is used in engines, solid biofuels, for example, firewood or pellets, and gas-like biofuel. About 60% of biofuels are its traditional forms, firewood pellets, for example, used for heating homes and cooking. They're used by 40% of the world's population. Actually, biofuel is pretty researched nowadays. It's one of the best candidates to replace traditional fuels. The United States Department of Energy studied seaweeds. They were grown in ponds with an area of 1,000 square meters. Productivity was very high. Just for information, 200,000 hectares of ponds can produce enough fuel for consumption of 5% of all US cars for a year. As you can see, biofuel is very prospective, but is still underdeveloped source of energy. Also, I wanted to tell you about atomic energetics. Probably many of you know that in 20th century, people were very excited of atomic energetics and everything what was connected to it. There were many things inspired by it, from comics and kids' toys to real science projects like a mini nuclear reactor as an engine for a plane or a car. By the way, these projects weren't forgotten or useless. Most modern submarines, military and icebreaker ships are powered by nuclear reactors. Sounds much less crazy now, right? Dreams about bright nuclear future were fallen, especially after Cold War, when people all over the world were scared of nuclear war every day since late 40s to early 80s. And after the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster in 1986. However, nuclear power plants are the most effective ways to gain energy in the world even today. Just to mention that in France, 76% of electricity is produced at nuclear power plants. That's very great, especially for those countries which doesn't have tons of fossils. Even more, atomic energetics is not the most dangerous and polluting ways to extract energy. Power plant itself isn't very hazardous if to store used radioactive materials correctly. The main problem of NPP, nuclear power plant, is vulnerability of them. Even if the lights went off for half an hour, it's an emergency situation which could lead to very serious consequences. Let's remember what happened to NPP Fukushima 1 in Japan. The earthquake and tsunami shock led to a complete blackout of the station. The reactors partially collapsed. There were a significant release of radioactive materials in the atmosphere, up to 20% of the emissions during the Chernobyl accident. There were not much casualties, So, if we want to replace oil with peaceful atom, we should make NPP as protected as only possible. And be responsible, of course. NPP are giving enough energy even as for today, so engineers should focus on reliability and safety of atomic energetics, not on productivity. This is what we need to do to ensure that NPP won't make a big boom. These were the most prospective and progressive alternatives for classic oil and other fossils. We should really think about it, because this is our future. Thanks for your attention and be thoughtful about our environment.